Is the airport crappy in Philadelphia? Is that what might be bringing down the Eagles' scores?
Well, it's not like they're going through the C terminal.
That's true.
So I don't know.
I don't know if a couple people are theorizing if whether that had anything to...
I've only been there a few times, the Philadelphia airport. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not the worst airport I've ever been to. It's not Minneapolis-St. Paul.
No, it's okay.
Obviously.
It's okay.
But it's a fine airport. Nordo and I had good trips there for Army-Navy before he ditched me.
I continue to be stunned by, and stung by, reaction to the opening rant. 507 texter. It's your attitude and every other fan's stupid, overly dramatic outlook on the team that I wish now more than anything Darnold would have played exactly as expected and we would have had a 3-win season. Then all you hypocritical "I'm not a hater" haters wouldn't have something to talk or complain about. I just don't get the negativity, Dan. It's your first choice to be this way ever since the new boys in the corner office took over. It's annoying. Enjoy the season and let's talk about stupid political crap with Pot Kessler.
Hold on, is the allegation that you just got negative?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, the allegation seems to be that I was never this critical of Mike Zimmer. No, what I try to be is a little more consistent. And what I've said is I think it became too easy to turn. When the Vikings made the coaching change from Zimmer, it was probably due. I don't think I ever suggested otherwise. But I also think what I said is be careful making him the root of all evil. It's too easy to blame everything on him. And then similarly, it's too easy to glom onto a bunch of cool buzzwords and get excited about a new regime that has had some successes and some failures, quite frankly. And I'm still largely going to grade more on performance in the regular season and the postseason than I am simply about these various ratings. In that person's world, apparently, they're not concerned about that. And the Vikings, I'm sure, love you for it. I'm sure it brings a smile to their face to say, well, fans like that, we don't really have anything to worry about. We just keep winning in these surveys, and we keep saying the right things, and we win enough regular season games, we'll be fine. I mean, what he was forgetting is he wanted it. He's one of those guys who wants to turn Mike Zimmer into the Antichrist. And Zimmer had ups and downs. But Zimmer also did have some success. The team had some success, even if it's in spite of him. If you want to go down that route, they did. The suggestion was, well, but the quarterback situation wasn't as in flux as it is now. What's more in flux than having to go to a career journeyman backup, Case Keenum?
Right. Your
to have your breakthrough season. Yeah, I mean, what are you talking about?
You bring in Sam Darnold.
So,
or I should say Sam. Who was our other Sam? Bradford.
Sam Bradford, that's right, yeah. And I was the organization as committed financially and every other way then? I'm not sure. Yeah, they brought in Cousins, and I don't know that necessarily Zimmer was thrilled by that. He went along with it because he had to. But apparently, like I said, we're fine finishing high in these surveys and having cute regular season records.
I know this is what they should be doing, but the Vikings Twitter account 13 minutes ago, they put out a graphic. Yeah. It says number 2 overall ranking with the caption, "Players love to play here." #Skull. Which you should be. They should be getting that out there because that's what they're supposed to do. It's just funny. It just cracks me up. I love the caption, "Players love to play here." They do. We're a special place. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's lots of places they like to play. I really believe. I think that can be so overrated as a concept, and I'm less interested in that as I am putting together, for example, great offensive and defensive lines
and giving ourselves the best chance to excel, not just in the regular season, but in the postseason too. I don't think I'm calling for anybody's head. What I'm saying is have some perspective on stuff that let's be clear on the stuff that came out again last night or today. That's all NFLPA driven. They're doing their job, which is we want to do anything we can to enhance conditions, for work conditions for players. That's 100% expected. Just doesn't mean we all have to become fixated on it as if that defines everything and will determine outwardly what we should be celebrating. They're just trying to raise all boats, and we're, including the media, kind of playing into their hands by turning these stories into like some other category of success that has nothing to do with whether you're going deep into the playoffs. Not when, as we've learned again for the second straight year minimum, that Kansas City doesn't score very high. Philadelphia doesn't score very high on these issues. And I keep hearing, well, you know what? Players aren't going to want to play there. No? Really? You don't think so? Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I'm sure players would like to have the best conditions possible. But if your object of the game is to compete and to be playing in January, I'm going to go on a limb and say you're going to worry about those things as much as pretty much everything else. And all I'm suggesting is I'm not going to put quite as much credence and credibility into the meaning of it all than some of the folks out there who maybe it's desperation. Maybe it's, well, we got nothing else to get excited about. We had a better regular season than was projected for sure, but it didn't lead anywhere. It ended badly. And so I got to grab on to something. So I'll grab on to that. It feels desperate to me. It feels a little bit feeble to me as well.
Packers are ranked 7th, by the way, in case people are
Packers
wondering.
are out of curiosity. Okay.
Yeah.
Where are the Bears? I'm guessing pretty low. I think they might have been middle of the pack. I read somewhere
about that. Yeah, they're 14th.
I think coaching they were very low.
Head coach got a C.
C?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he got an F.
No, he got a C, which is worst in the league. 32nd.
Pod Kessler will be with us at 5:30. We'll get his view on Luka Doncic. And our old buddy Lou Raguse, KARE 11 reporter, who is all over the latest developments in the Feeding Our Future trial, which, as odd as this sounds, I don't think it's getting the proper attention. It's almost like because there was such a wave of coverage that the feeling is that we're feeding our future out. I don't think we should be. Again, some of the details coming out on this latest case, some of the testimony will curl your nose hairs. And it's a further reminder of just how big a scandal and how embarrassing it is to the state that always likes to think that it does things right politically in terms of how the government works. It's an embarrassment, and we're seeing that play out again in real time. And so Lou has been all over that story the last few days, and he will join us at 4:15 for a fairly quick hit as well. Let's do this. Let's pause. We'll go a section briefly. Well, actually, I guess. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Raguse is next. So let's pause. I'll get to something else at 4:30 that I have up my sleeve. And we'll have Top 5 at 5 yet to come. We already had Mike Conley. And as I mentioned, Pod Kessler. So it's a very busy show the rest of the way. Let's talk feeding our future developments in that case today. Interesting new testimony. Lou Raguse with the very latest from KARE 11.
Schwab Trading is now powered by Ameritrade to give you a new, elevated trading experience tailor-made for trader minds. Go deeper with Thinkorswim, the powerful award-winning trading platforms now at Schwab. Unlock support from the trade desk, our team of passionate traders who live and breathe trading like you do. And sharpen your skills with an expanding library of online education crafted just for traders. All designed to help you trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
Well, I thought it was about time we caught up with our old pal Lou Raguse, KARE 11, who has been all over several aspects of the Feeding Our Future story and trials, and there's much more to get to the last couple of days. Lou joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. As we welcome you back to the show, sir, what would be, at least to this moment, the top headline of the day in the Feeding Our Future case from your viewpoint?
Well, Dan, first of all, thanks for having me on again. And I think the headline would be that people are testifying about being used in the case without their knowledge. First, we heard from a St. Paul gym owner who truly is in the business of helping kids. He had no idea that Amy Bach had registered his gym as a so-called meal site and claimed to serve 500 every single day and collected $1.8 million for reimbursement money as a result. And then what turned out to be actually kind of a humorous thing was a mechanic from Egan, just a guy who
I'm going to put Lou back on hold. We're getting kind of an odd connection, and we're losing about every fourth or fifth word. So we'll see if we can get Lou to a better cell phone signal. Don't forget Kessler. Pot Kessler will be in studio at 5:30. Top 5 at 5. Yet to come. Already a good conversation with Mike Conley. The Wolves waiting in Los Angeles. They got there early and are preparing to take on the Lakers tomorrow night in a game that, well, now every Lakers game will pretty much have some national attention. If you have questions for Lou, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. That number is 64686. And there is, I think, a lot to get to regarding several developments in the Feeding Our Future story. Let's give it a second shot here and see if we got a little better signal. We were losing every third or fourth word. Our audience hangs on every word from you, Lou Raguse.
Yeah, I know.
I wanted to be sure. That sounds
Sorry
a little
about
better.
that.
That's okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, some sketchy phone service at the federal courthouse.
Yeah.
But what I was just getting to was there was some humorous testimony, actually, from a guy he's a mechanic in Egan, just a great salt-of-the-earth guy, and he had no idea that this entire time he has been the treasurer of the board of directors of Feeding Our Future.
How is this possible? Or how is this explained in court, at least?
Well, it played out perfectly. He talked about how he met Amy Bach because she was dating his neighbor, and they were having beers at a bonfire in the backyard. She told him she was starting a nonprofit. She said, and I need to form a board. Hey, would you be on my board? And he said, yes, in kind of the way that you would if you were approached in a situation like that. But he never heard anything about it again after that until the case happened. And then the jury was shown all these documents that Amy Bach filed with the state that had his forged signature on it, claiming that he was approving the budgets for Feeding Our Future and was volunteering 5 hours a week on this board.
And it looks like from your X handle, you had a chance to chat with him on either on his way in or on his way out of the courthouse.
Yeah, that was just as he was leaving.
Yeah.
I just kind of re-asked some of the things that he was asked in court there. He just thought it was absolutely ridiculous. And he wasn't entirely happy to have to come and testify in federal court in this huge scandal that he had nothing to do with. And his name was in the paper at one point. His friends are asking him about it, like, how'd you get wrapped up in that? He's like, wrapped up in what? Ugh. He actually thought it was called Feeding Our Friends. He didn't even get the name right. That's how little he actually knew about it.
Remarkable. So I assume the Bach defense has not started yet, right? What are you hearing? What is it going to be denial on everything? Has it already been? It feels like there's already been some fairly damning testimony. Obviously, you're going to follow the whole story. You're going to follow the defense as well. Do we have any idea what the defense is going to be for Amy Bach?
Yeah, I do. And first of all, as ridiculous as this, phony board member stuff is, she's not charged with adding a phony board member. She's charged with wire fraud and things directly related. So they have to prove those crimes. And her defense is that even though she was the leader of this nonprofit, she was sitting at the top, her defense is that this fraud was happening without her knowing it. Like when she would approve a form that said 2,500 kids were being fed at this place every single day, she assumed that it was true. Or she had one of her trusted employees verify it for her, and that employee told her it was true, so to the best of her knowledge, she thought it was true. That's her defense. And, it's kind of like, I tell people, like in a drug case, it's a lot easier to convict the drug dealer on the street than it is to convict the drug kingpin that is ultimately at the top.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it's because they have everything's at arm's length.
Right.
And there has been a lot of this fraud evidence that makes, like, one of her employees, his name is Abdikerm Idle. This Abdikerm Idle guy looks like the most fraudulent guy in this entire case, but he's not on trial right now. Amy Bach is.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy, Idle, is collecting all these kickbacks and stuff, and the jury's going to have to ask, well, do we know beyond a reasonable doubt that Amy Bach received a kickback? It doesn't matter what Idle received.
So, as I understand it, too, was there a guilty plea in this case involving a Minneapolis man as well? What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so originally Bach was going to go on trial with 3 other guys, and 2 of them were the owners of Safari Restaurant in South Minneapolis. The other one was a former aide to Mayor Jacob Fry. Well, 2 of those guys pleaded guilty right before the trial started, one of the Safari owners and the Jacob Fry former aide. So those guys are out of the mix as far as this trial goes. We keep hearing their names a lot, but they're not on trial right now. And so, it's a question whether they come in and testify at some point against their former co-defendants. But already there are so many, there were 70 people originally charged, and 30 of them or more, 70, I think 40 of them have been found guilty already. So many of them have been coming in and testifying already that at a certain point, it's kind of like piling on, and they got to get to the point and let the jury deliberate. I
got a text in anticipation for your appearance from 612 guy who writes, Lou reported the other night that we only clawed back $66 million. Where did the rest of the money go, and can we get more of it back?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, $66 million out of $250 million is considered a lot from their perspective as far as what they're able to get back.
Right.
So much of it has gone overseas, and they'll never get back. The stuff that they're most easily able to get back is property. And, if it comes in the form of a house, if it was paid for in full, there's a lot of equity there, and they recoup a lot there. Cars are depreciating, and they every year that this case goes on, those cars are worth less and less money. So I think it actually started out at about $70 million that they figured they've clawed back, but really now it's down to about 66.
And how many more? The Bach prosecution was considered obviously going to be one of the big ones here. Are there more on the back end, or is this the last big one?
This is the main event, and so it's Amy Bach, and her co-defendant's name is Salim Saeed from Safari Restaurant. He's one of the top alleged fraudsters in the thing. Let's say that these 2 are found guilty. There will likely be a cascading guilty pleas among most of the remaining ones. But as of right now, there are trials scheduled. 2 trials are scheduled for April. Another trial is scheduled for August, and potentially a couple more in the fall and winter. So this is going to be the year of the Feeding Our Future trial unless more guilty pleas come. And it really depends on how the case goes, because it's like dominoes.
Yeah, right.
Once a couple of your co-defendants have pleaded guilty, the chances of you getting away are a lot slimmer.
So we haven't talked in a while, but was it late last week? There was also a story, I think you covered this as well, about allegations of possible witness tampering. We've had, jury tampering earlier in this case. Now witness tampering. What do we know about that? Where does that all stand?
Well, that was quite crazy because I was there for that. There was what they call a cooperating defendant about to testify. That means it's somebody he's a fraudster who's already pleaded guilty, and he's about to testify against these 2 who are on trial. He was in the hallway, and then these 2 guys came in, and they were conspicuous. They were kind of loud and stumbling around, and they went and sat down next to the jury on the far left of the courtroom, which is odd because there's plenty of open seats up by the aisle. And then they got out and went out in the hallway. And here, one of them approached that witness who was kind of pacing in the hallway waiting for his turn, tried to get him to go into the bathroom to talk about his testimony. And so now that guy, the one who tried to intervene with the witness, he's back in jail because he's charged in this case. He has his own trial coming up in August. So he's back in jail for like a violation of the terms of his release. He's not charged with witness tampering, but it was enough to arrest him again. And the other thing that was odd about it was the moment that those guys came in, there was a witness testifying about their role in the whole thing because they ran a meal site in Mankato. And it was like, what are the odds that they would walk in right when somebody's testifying about their relevant portion of it? So the prosecutors believe that Salim Saeed, the guy who's on trial with Amy Bach, was communicating with them somehow and telling them to come in because they're about to talk about they're about to testify about you. And so that hasn't been proven yet, but that was the allegation.
You've covered a lot of trials and a lot of cases in your reporting days. Where does this one rank?
I would rank it the most corrupt. You know, it's a fraud case, so obviously it's corruption at its core, but bribing a juror was unprecedented for me, so that's the first I've ever seen that. I've seen witness tampering before, but it goes hand in hand with what's going on here. It's gotten to the point where nothing surprises me. And it's like, you know, it's hard to commit to covering a month-long trial every single day. So it had reached like that point where it's like, yeah, I could probably pull away for a couple days here. And then all of a sudden that happened. Yeah. And it's like, well, I got to go tomorrow. See what happens next.
So I assume you'll be filing live reports the rest of the night on KARE 11. Is that correct?
Yep. Here at 5 o'clock, we'll have more from the testimony of that board member, the unwitting treasurer of Feeding Our Future.
Can't make it up. It is. I mean, it's you want to laugh, but it's not funny. You know, it's funny in a farcical way. But there, as you say, there's so much corruption to this thing. You don't really want to encourage the laughter, right? Because there's too much at stake, right?
Especially with the bribe of the juror. I mean, there's a million jokes that could come out of that, but that juror was absolutely frightened that these people knew where to find her, and she knew that they could get to her. And that at the heart of it, it's like if somebody values their own personal safety over almost anything else, right, and their family safety. So that it could corrupt the entire system if they're able to get to a juror. So that puts it in perspective, you know, and it's easy to crack jokes, but it is a very serious thing.
Lou, thanks once again for the great overview. We'll be watching, and then we'll be in touch soon, as always. Thank you, Lou.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Lou Raguse, intrepid reporter for KARE 11, all over some of the latest developments that fall under the classification of you really can't make them up. You can't make up. What really does kind of bring it home is this Egan mechanic, Jamie Phelps, who by all accounts is like I said, has got nothing to do with the case, but finds himself in the middle of it, just, responding to a question at a barbecue or whatever it was.
Well, neighborhood
bonfire, whatever the case may be. You go, hey, you want to be a treasurer of this organization? Yeah, I'll be on the board. I'm fine with it. And now suddenly he finds himself today having to testify in the case. Again, is it the Coen Brothers? I mean, is this not a Coen Brothers satire waiting to be made? Or is it too serious? I mean, is it too serious an issue when you're talking about at minimum of $250 million? All the manipulation that's gone on here, the cynical manipulation of the system with what was supposed to be in the front end, the intent of what? Helping people, which we want to believe we're the kind of state that's our fallback position, right? We want to help people.
Getting food to kids that need it during the pandemic that might not be able to get it.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's, if they want to deviate and just go really farcical on it, they have more than enough material that goes beyond just a regular sort of garden variety courtroom stuff. Bottom of the hour pause here. Pot Kessler in about 1 hour. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open. The number is 64687.
Lakefront Music Fest is back, bigger than ever. Don't miss out on Rock Night. That's Friday, July 11th. Headlined by Foreigner with support from 38 Special and Loverboy. Tickets still available, but are going fast. You can get the full details and your tickets today at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Do we want to make a sweet dream fade?
612 guy writes, you see what happens in Washington, D.C. now with Republicans controlling in control. All the corruption is going away. I can't wait for the arrest to happen. People need to go to jail. Obviously, Keith Ellison is not going to put the Democrats in jail. Well, there's a lot of stuff worth investigating. Some of it already has been. But I'd be careful what you wish for in that particular regard. And let's remember that it was a Democrat appointed U.S. attorney who was in this very studio just within the last couple of weeks who started this whole Feeding Our Future process when it comes to putting people in jail before you get too far afield and jump to the conclusions that you want to jump to on the basis of what is and isn't happening in Washington, D.C. Dateline, Lubbock, Texas. Some of you may have seen the news breaking that we have our first measles fatality in the United States in 10 years. Since 2015, a child who was not vaccinated has died from measles. This is in West Texas. It's the first death in an outbreak that began late last month. Politically speaking, people want to jump to the conclusions that Robert Kennedy Jr. is the reason that that individual wasn't vaccinated, because that's the political world in which we live, right? Might have absolutely nothing to do with whatever decision was made in that particular community, because there's some, in that community, there's been an anti-vaccine feeling for quite some time. But we have had stories of more measles outbreaks. And it is worth noting that the HHS Secretary, Robert Kennedy Jr., has indeed been front and center in propagating a series of demonstrably provable lies when it comes to the issue of scaremongering over autism and vaccines. I want to read from a piece in the New York Post. New York Post, not exactly a left-wing bastion when it comes to commentary, but it's nevertheless should make it all the more interesting to people. One of Kennedy's claims perpetually has been the lie that Americans have seen a huge spike in autism cases over the past 40 years. Autism rates, RFK said during his Senate confirmation hearings, have gone from 1 in 10,000 in 1980, and today in our children it's 1 in 34. Statistic was repeated during his swearing-in ceremony as well. President Trump repeated this statistic on Truth Social and in his executive order instituting the Make America Healthy Again Commission. Where the 1 in 10,000 number comes from, however, is a mystery. Even in 1966, when autism was diagnosed as a child being socially isolated and showing withdrawn behavior, researchers estimated that around 1 in 2,500 children were autistic. Idea that anyone had any useful handle on the number of autistic children in the past, much less use the same criterion we do, is preposterous. Autism wasn't even a separate diagnosis from schizophrenia in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders until as recently as 1980, the year Kennedy said the affliction began rising. Researchers didn't even start trying to track autism until 2000. It wasn't until 2006 that the American Army of Pediatrics recommended screening all children for autism during routine pediatrician visits in the first 2 years. Even now, there's no objective test for autism, no blood test, say for diagnosis. He goes on to write that when Senator Bill Cassidy, a physician, implored Kennedy Jr. to reassure mothers unequivocally and without qualification that vaccines do not cause autism, RFK would not do so. The data is there. I absolutely will do that. Not only will I do that, but I will apologize for any statements that misled people otherwise. As the writer writes, no, he won't, because tons of data already exist, and Kennedy keeps ignoring it, repeating debunked claims and creating fear. Let's momentarily set aside the fact that the studies have shown autism likely begins in the womb long before any vaccines are even given to children. There was never a shred of evidence that, for example, government colluded with Big Pharma to hide the risks of thimerosal from the public. Never a shred of evidence that this was true, and in due time, publications all retracted Kennedy's pieces. Indeed, RFK conveniently ignored numerous CDC studies that found no connection between the two. Then he cites several studies, including one out of Denmark. Once thimerosal, am I pronouncing that right, was removed from most vaccines over these fears, Kennedy moved on to spreading unfalsifiable paranoia about alleged unknown factors in MMR shots, causing a giant spike in autism. No fewer than 27 major studies have found no connection between MMR vaccines and autism. In fact, 10 years ago, a CDC study found no connection between the number of vaccine antibodies used and the risk of an autism diagnosis. Of course, it is good to question science. Serious people are out there doing it every day. But if you spend your life ignoring the preponderance of the scientific evidence, you're really not questioning science. You're just a quack. And in this case, a dangerous one. That's that left-wing bastion of political commentary, the New York Post, the writer writing on behalf of the New York Post. So that's only part of what we're dealing. I mean, we kind of knew this was coming with RFK Jr., but we've talked about, God, over the decades, we've talked about this aspect of this story many, many, many times before. And I've said, look, one of our most valued guests is Gerald Posner. He's written the ultimate opus on Big Pharma, called Pharma. It is not a compliment. There's plenty of reason to question a lot of the alignments, a lot of the conflicts of interest that exist between big business and big medicine and Big Pharma. So this is never about that medicine can never be questioned where there are honest concerns about conflicts of interest. But there has been very little to no evidence that has stood the test of time having to do with the ongoing claims made by your guy, RFK Jr. And now, again, we see the latest manifestation of it. The kid in Texas who died from measles, it may have had nothing to do with what RFK Jr. has propagated. Or it may be directly related. It's making news headlines for the obvious reason. We're seeing spikes in a disease that we shouldn't have to be messing with at all, needlessly, in no small measure across the board because of that sort of myth being perpetuated often enough by people in positions of authority or people saying, well, the folks think you can't handle the truth, but we're here to give you the truth. The problem is if there's the emperor wears no clothes in this case, there isn't solid evidence that is held up to indicate any significant link here. Does that mean there shouldn't be more study? Does that mean there can't be questions asked? No, of course not. But it is, without question, it's making news again because whether it had anything to do with what's happening in Texas, it clearly has to do with a momentum that is, well, no, wait a minute. You heard what what he has said. And we all know that the original allegations are always sexy. They're always sensational. And once they're out there, most people don't hang around long enough to see whether they have been confirmed by good, solid, systematic medical evidence. And that's when the damage is done. And we're kind of in a up is down, down is up mode, right? Across the board, and I'm sure we'll get into this with Kessler, where suddenly now it's the Russians are the good guys. And Ukrainians aren't. I mean, we're literally seeing the world turned upside down. And I honestly believe I've mocked and ripped a lot of the performative politics of the last Democratic administration. I hate performance politics. But what I see now, frankly, is just the other end of the same concept, the other side of the coin. We're seeing largely not substantive politics. We're seeing performance politics. It's just now being done by the other side. And if that's the side you're rooting for, you love the performance, even though it's more performance than it is substance. There's already been, what was it? At least 5 examples of what's the Elon Musk Doge? 5 examples of incredible savings that's already been done in finding waste. 5 huge examples have already been removed from the websites that were praising themselves for doing what they did, because it turned out that information was at the very least misleading, and that it was nowhere near, they were not saving anywhere near the amount of money that, even by their own admission, that's performance. That means most of this is performance. This isn't to say that there shouldn't be examinations of waste out there. There is probably too much money too easily spent. But to me, what we're seeing again is just the other end of the performance realm. And I guess that's the game, is if it's your side doing the performing and you want to believe it, you love it. If it's their side doing the performing, well, it's just performance. There's nothing really behind it. And that's unfortunately exactly where we are put, or we are in. That's the mode I think we're in at this point. I want to double back to a toy department subject we explored yesterday, unrelated to any of this, in our remaining minutes before the top 5 at 5. I'd mentioned we were talking about the Wolves not really having a pure backup point guard. And somebody said, well, wait a minute, isn't that Dilly? And I should probably clarify that in theory, that is what Dillingham represents. I meant, at least from the start of the season, when I think of backup point guard, I go, this is the guy in the rotation from the beginning who, when the main point guard gets to the bench or is injured, takes a break, he's the first guy in off the bench to replace that person and plays whatever, the second quarter or 7 minutes of the second quarter. That's what I mean when I think of a built-in backup point guard. Now, we're seeing more of Dillingham, and obviously, eventually, it's going to be, I think the Wolves have their way. He will take Mike Conley's job, right? That's the idea. That's the succession plan. It has to be at this point. We brought back, did you see we brought back your guy, Bones Highland?
I did see that.
A Conley draft pick, I think. We've had him before, haven't we? I thought we had Bones.
I thought we wanted him.
Oh, is that what it was?
We couldn't get him.
Okay.
Conley's had him before, I think.
Conley drafted him, I think.
Yes.
In the beginning. But anyway, he's on a 2-way contract, too. I don't know how much he's actually going to play, but we got him back.
And he's going to start in Iowa.
Is he? That's okay.
Yes.
That's it.
From what I saw earlier.
So, in any case, I just mean, technically that's what Dillingham is, a point guard, a scoring point guard, no question. But he hasn't been in the regular rotation. In fact, there may be no player I've seen Finchy treat with more disdain as openly as he does. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it at times, with sometimes the shot selection or maybe some of the things he does defensively.
Josh Minot's close.
Yeah, he is. You're right.
He had a moment where he was in the rotation, and now he plays for 10 seconds, gets backdoored and benched.
Yeah.
But you're right. As a guy who had a little bit more upside, or at least fans' intrigue, and has had some really good moments this season, Dilly absolutely has the shortest leash of guys that actually get to play a lot.
It's not even close. And again, I mean, Johnny said it with us the other day that the fastest way to Finchy's heart is how you guard, what you do defensively. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then he has very little patience for that. Now, in Dilly's case, I think sometimes it's taking a quick shot.
Yep. Moving it.
And not moving it. But again, I don't know. Maybe I'm too easy, because I still think you have to take the good with the bad when you factor in the energy he supplies, the different kind of offensive talent that he represents, that really there's no one else in this team that compares. I guess Anthony Edwards, obviously, but that's it. In terms of creating his own deal, there's really nobody else that does it quite the same way and can create space the way he can. I'd be willing to accept a certain amount of, oh my God, there he goes again, before I'm going to turn on him. But man, he did the one time where they took a timeout and he signaled basically to the bench, like, sit your ass over there. I don't know that he said that, but that's what it looked like. It was vicious. And obviously there's just, Finchy does not, his tolerance level for him, and maybe there's stuff in practice we don't even know about.
Yeah, well, the circumstances of the game the other night, I think, allowed him to play through some of those mistakes, because as you go through the play-by-play, he had a couple of wild shots, and when they were trying to make their comeback, where he gets into the lane, he's going a million miles an hour, he flings it off the backboard, and it's not close. But what are you going to do? You're down by 16. You can't bench him. You've already benched everybody else. Edwards may or may not be hurt. The other thing about Dilly is you can tell the guys like playing with them. We've probably talked about that because he gives everybody energy, but he also gives everybody the ball.
He does.
If
he
they're
does.
open. Like
he does.
Rudy gets dunks off of him.
Yes.
Nas gets shots. He obviously takes the ball out of Ant's hands, which I'm sure at times he prefers. So he can move the thing, and that's why I think people like playing with him.
I agree, and there are times where I almost wish he'd be more selfish offensively, but I'm guessing he's anticipating, he's trying to read Finch's mind and say, all right, I'll worry about scoring later. My best way out here is to distribute and to get other people involved, and then there's always going to be time for me to I always know I can score, so I'll worry about that later. And I think that's what seems to dictate most of what he does is exactly what you say. Now, there's the occasion where he takes a quick three that we saw on that occasion.
He's
where
excitable.
Then he got, but I mean, he's not the first guy to take an early three, I don't believe, I mean, it's not necessarily that unusual. 5:30 today is Pot Kessler. We'll get into with him a lot of state politics. The governor apparently has made it clear that he is not going to run for that open U.S. Senate seat. And it does sound like he's going to run for a third term as governor, but he ain't going to run for the Senate seat. I don't know that I'm particularly surprised by that, but
I'm not either.
That's among the subjects we will explore. Feeding Our Future, we won't have to talk about much with Kessler because we had a nice segment with Lou Raguse, who's been covering that story in the courtroom. That's why I wanted to get to Lou, because he's been all over it. And then there's some stuff out of Washington that I want us to get to. And he had a couple of other, what else was there on the list from the state? There were two or three other. Oh, apparently now the big thing is we need a state song. Have you heard about that one?
Oh, jeez.
Do
we?
I guess. Do we?
Well, we won't even be allowed to play it because it's licensed music.
Oh, that's true too. But how does the state get away with doing that?
New bill would add Purple Rain and Girl from the North Country as official songs. That's what. So the Minnesota legislature just got to work. We just figured out the whole logjam of who's got the majority in the whole bit, and that's what we're tackling.
I guess.
What a great state.
This might be Kessler overstating how big a story this is, because it's got talkability.
Well, yeah, but he says it's a new bill. But my response would be, who is writing this?
How about the sports gambling? Is that dead again? I want Kessler to update us on that. Is that already dead?
I think
on arrival?
It's delayed. Somebody texted in last week. And I thought in this case,
everybody, like the tribes were in on this one. The casinos were in on this one. The tracks, that everybody had kind of agreed to whatever the new terms were. That's where I'm confused. It sounds like it's some folks saying, yeah, but is it evil? Look at all the stories indicating we don't realize the harm we've done and what we have unleashed. And I'm not blind to some of that. I'm not necessarily sure it should stand in the way of doing it altogether. But that'll be among the subjects. Somebody said they thought the Wild Anthem was the state song. Now, that's just the Wild song, isn't it?
That's a State of Hockey song.
State of Hockey song.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to us last night?
We'll talk about it in the top 5.
We blew the lead. We had a lead last night.
Yep.
It's the opposite of the other game against the Red Wings.
Basically, we were supposed to win that game, according to some analytic, 80% of the time.
Is that right?
Or like 86 or 88% of the time. I think Russo tweeted out the graphic. I'll find it for the top 5. Russo's going to join you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. But it was a game that was almost impossible to lose.
And we found a way to lose it.
Somehow the Wild did last night. But they're still in a good spot because Colorado can't win right now. So no one's gaining any ground on us for that third spot in the Central. And
now we'll be lucky to see Eriksson Ek until mid-season of 25-26, apparently.
Yeah.
That's getting
How long is his contract?
Ominous. I don't have any idea, but it seems like that's... So, again, we are going to have potentially some money to spend at the deadline, if we so choose. But I'll say again, I don't want to add people, right? I want to add people that can help us beyond this season. If this is our way of doing that, then let's do it. But let's not act like we're one player away, because I don't think we are, especially if Kaprizov can't come back too, right?
It's all dependent on 97.
That's crazy. All right, top 5?
Maybe a few things from the Combine. A lot of intentionality there today. We will talk about the Wild and a busy Wolves day in terms of injury updates, in terms of contracts, in terms of signing guys, and in terms of a trade rumor or a trade certainty about Kevin Durant this summer.